We're on iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. It is great.
Hours.
Sat in traffic for an hour and a half. Have a dinner. Learn stuff.
Were you on the phone in traffic?
I was on the phone in traffic and going home in traffic.
Gotta maximize that time.
Well, you got the free agency period coming up, and I'm going to get to a couple of things I learned last night. So, talking to an executive on the phone yesterday. Great to have you in, by the way, again. We were talking about the Joe Burrow situation, and he said to me, listen to me. Joe Burrow can say what he wants. Cincinnati's going to fight for him. This executive to me said, what did the NFL do to St. Louis? You're a dying Midwest city. See ya. What did they do to Oakland? You can't get the stadium deal right. Bye. What did they do to San Diego? No new stadium? I'll move you up to L.A. NFL, Jacksonville now is on the clock. You get that Jacksonville now is playing back-to-back games in London. Jacksonville can't sell seats. They're on the clock. Who's the last in the NFL in attendance right now? Outside of the Chargers, who are moving into a new stadium. Cincinnati. Thousands of empty seats. Joe Burrow is a life preserver. There's no legacy in Cincinnati. They could leave the NFL tomorrow. Nobody'd care outside of Cincinnati. I mean, Cleveland's got a legacy. Jim Brown. I mean, Cleveland's got a legacy. Okay? Bad teams in this NFL have a legacy. But Buffalo, until they got the quarterback right recently, you started hearing rumors really often about Buffalo going to Toronto. Nobody loses sleep in the NFL. Jacksonville right now can't sell tickets. NFL's over it. They'll move them to London. NFL, recent memory. They're not moving Philadelphia. But they're not going to move Dallas. But if you're low attendance, you're in a city that's dying, they will move in a heartbeat. They don't suffer fools gladly. Bad owner, see ya. They don't care. Joe Burrow's the life preserver. He is going to save this franchise. They're going to fight like hell to keep him. Listen, the commentary now, Carson Palmer goes out and says, yeah, it's not a winning franchise. You have multiple people. Now Solomon Wilcox, who lives in Cincinnati, is a former Bengal, comes out and says, yeah, if I'm Joe Burrow, you got to think about playing for Cincinnati.
I watched as it sucked the life out of him. I watched
Carson Palmer.
Fans in Cincinnati dump garbage on his lawn. Carson Palmer was a guy who was strong-willed, talented, and needed more around him. He walked away from the game because the love for the game had left him. And that's a shame. And organizations need to be weary of that one man in a bad environment cannot turn it around by himself.
Listen, man, that's Solomon Wilcox. He lives in Cincinnati. He's a former Bengal. They like him there. And he's like, yeah, I saw what happened to Carson Palmer. Listen, the NBA feels guilty. They try to make the cities work. Major League Baseball could have taken baseball out of Tampa and Oakland years ago, but they want to make it work. They're going to add cities. That's not the way the NFL plays. NFL's like, we don't really need you. We need Dallas. We need Philadelphia. We need New York. But they pulled football out of L.A. They pulled it out of St. Louis. They pulled it out of San Diego. I mean, you got to get the quarterback right. Favre to Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay's going nowhere. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, small markets going nowhere. I mean, this is just my opinion. I wasn't told this last night, but when New Orleans went through that awful tragedy of Katrina and they moved their practices to San Antonio, I mean, all of us thought, like, are the Saints going to last? Well, of course they were. They had Sean Payton and Drew Brees. They were going to retain their franchise. Like, quarterbacks, they make franchises here. It's like NBA stars and quarterbacks. LeBron goes to the Cavaliers. They're worth $300 million. He leaves, the valuation goes down. Can you imagine if LeBron in his prime played for the Knicks? They'd be a $7 billion franchise. As it is, they're probably worth $4 billion. So Patrick Mahomes is worth, in my opinion, is worth $1 billion to the Kansas City Chiefs. Lamar Jackson, if he maintains his greatness, is worth $1 billion. Cincinnati, what's their legacy? They're economically in a city that's going nowhere. Their attendance is awful. They're not relevant. In their own division, they're not relevant. We don't know if their coach can coach. They got to get this thing right because Jacksonville is on the clock, and they can't get their coach right, and Jacksonville can't get the quarterback right. and they're on the clock. They're playing games in London. And I know what you're saying. Oh, you're dramatizing this thing. That's what people in San Diego said, and Oakland said, and St. Louis said. The NFL drops hints. Buffalo couldn't get their quarterback and coach right for about 15 years. What happened? You started here in Toronto. Jacksonville can't get it right at quarterback coach. Now they're playing games back-to-back in London. Cincinnati's going to fight like mad to keep Joe Burrow. He is their life preserver. They go another 5 years last in the league in attendance. I'm telling you right now, nobody's going to shed a tear. Somebody else want. You don't think teams will line up to get cities? So talking to somebody yesterday, he added perspective. He said, don't kid yourself. Cincinnati is going to fight like hell to keep Joe Burrow. They're not giving Joe Burrow up. Ohio kid, #1 pick, good year for quarterbacks. The other guy, too, is banged up. We don't know about Justin Herbert. They're going to fight for him. Let me throw this one at you. Learned this at a dinner last night. Again, putting in time. One of the things that doesn't get talked about by anybody, not even well-connected media, the NFL ownership is a very unique club. It's the best investment in America. It's not Tesla. It's not Apple. It's not Google. They do not guarantee 20% equity increases a year. NBA teams don't either. The NFL, you own an NFL team. It is a cash cow. Every single network. Do you know the NFL is the only network of all the sports networks in the world that you don't negotiate TV rights? They tell you what you're going to pay. They tell CBS you're going to pay this. They tell us. They tell ABC. They tell us what we're going to pay. We beg. We take them to nice steak dinners, but that's how the game works. The NFL. And when you own an NFL franchise, you are in a very unique club. So I was talking to a general manager last night in the NFL, and he said, I feel very lucky. He says in maybe a quarter of the NFL teams to a third, Mondays during the season, if you lose, you spend Monday talking the billionaire off the ledge because he's very upset and his friends are on him. That's why you try to befriend the wife of the owner because she's usually more reasonable. That's a real thing in the NFL. Dealing with the owner. It's a unique club in America. You just print money. Networks line up. You tell them what they're going to pay. I mean, seriously, that's how the game works. And so the ownership thing is interesting because we are all now hearing Tom Brady teams. Oakland, I mean, you name them. We've heard Tampa. We've heard Chargers. We've heard Oakland. We've heard Indianapolis. Those are not led by the general managers or the coaches. Nobody in the NFL is looking for a 43-year-old immobile quarterback who's expensive. I'm told owners look at the teams who are, you're hearing reports. Tampa struggles with attendance. Oakland wants to be relevant. Colts, post-Peyton Manning, post-Andrew Luck, no longer relevant. I mean, Chargers, we all know, they're struggling to sell tickets. Is that the Tom Brady interest is mostly being driven by owners. Because most coaches right now, I mean, we see what's happening in the NFL. We see what's happening in college and high school football. The best athlete now is wide receiver, and the best athlete is quarterback. The best athletes aren't playing running back. The state of California has about 3 good high school running backs a year in a state with 38 million people. It's got 40 receivers a year and 8 quarterbacks. I follow recruiting. Every year in California, the gap between the quality of quarterback and wide receiver and running back gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The best athletes now are playing quarterback and wide receiver. What does that mean? People are moving the pocket. I mean, even Jimmy Garoppolo, we don't consider him like a great athlete, right? You watch San Francisco play. He's bootlegging. He's rolling out. They're moving the pocket for Lamar. They're moving it for Russell. They're moving it for Mahomes. They're moving it for Dak. They're moving it for Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the NFL. It's much easier. I'll give you a little insight here that we don't talk about. It's probably boring. It's much easier on your offensive line if you bootleg occasionally, if you move the pocket. It's very hard to ask an offensive line 32 times a game to straight up pass block. It's hard. It's much easier when Lamar's rolling out and the weak side guys can kind of take a play off and kind of push their guy. So the league is looking between the erosion of quality of play on the offensive line and the change, the dynamic change, best athlete plays quarterback. Everybody wants to move their pocket around. That's the new NFL. Get somebody who can move a little. Daniel Jones isn't a world-class athlete, but you can roll him out. You can bootleg him, right? So nobody's looking for Brady. It's the owners who are interested in Brady. He sells tickets. He makes you relevant. And by the way, so this is why teams are kicking tires. I still think Tom ends up in New England. But the reason you're hearing the Oakland rumors, it's Mark Davis. He wants to be relevant. It's not John Gruden. John Gruden, I'm told, is okay with Derek Carr. John Gruden doesn't like any of his quarterbacks. Doesn't matter who John Gruden has. He'd complain if he had Mahomes. You know, he throws sometimes without looking. That's just John Gruden. But John Gruden, I'm told, likes Derek Carr. He does. He likes him. He trusts him. He completes a lot of passes. He likes Derek Carr. John just is always finicky about quarterbacks and beats him up a little bit emotionally. But so when you see all this Brady stuff, start noticing where you're seeing the Brady rumors at places struggling to sell tickets. 4 of the top 5 rumors. Cincinnati's the only place he's not rumored to be going because everybody knows Tom Brady wouldn't go to Cincinnati. We've heard Tampa. We've heard Indy. We've heard the Chargers. We've heard Oakland. What do they all have in common? They're lower in the NFL in attendance. So the perspective I'm getting is the Brady stuff around the league, it's not really coach-driven. The coaches all want to – every coach in this football knows the way. That's why we're getting college coaches. The world is changing now in the NFL. It's a great way, by the way. It makes it way more fun to watch for me. I love the new – but, like, you got to be at least Daniel Jones athletic now, or people don't want you. The strongest arm in the draft is Jacob Eason at Washington. He's 5th on every board I've seen. He's number 5. He's the biggest, strongest quarterback in the draft. Arm talent is the guy at Washington. He's everybody's 5th. The hurt guy at Alabama they like that can move. You know, Joe Burrow's an athlete, all-state basketball, he can move. Justin Herbert, we watched him at the Rose Bowl, he can move. Jordan Love at Utah State can move. Those guys are all ahead of the big, strong arm guy. The biggest, tallest, strongest arm guy, 5th. That's the league. So when you hear about all the Brady stuff, a lot of it is relevance-driven, ticket-driven, owner-driven stuff. Doesn't make it wrong. It's just that's where it's coming from. That's where it's coming from. All right. Okay, so about 3 or 4 days ago, last week, one of the most beloved, iconic media members in society, me, suggested something, and all you did was yell at me. Well. Vegas is on board. Uh-oh. That's coming up. Over 50 years ago, 2 men with a passion for motorsport and engineering began building race engines in an old abandoned mill. Opportunity on every wide open road, invitation in every curve. Push the envelope, break the rules. A chance to prove that a 2-ton family sedan could have the performance to compete in a 24-hour track race. But shocking, the competition wasn't really what it was all about. Okay, they wanted to kind of expand on all the excellence they'd created, this engineering company. So what do? They said, listen, we're going to put race car engines in luxury sedans, and we're going to stun the elite in world racing. And they did, over and over and over again. We may never truly understand what drives Mercedes-AMG to break barriers, along with every record in the book. But here's to allowing us to enjoy the results. Learn more, mbusa.com/AMG. Mercedes-AMG driving performance. Mercedes.